Way to go, Tic Tac!
That's how you punch.
Wakanda forever!
You wouldn't have heard of me.
Let me put you on hold.
Dance off, bro! He's a friend from work!
I can do this all day.
Yeah, I know.
What up, guys? It's Dom, and welcome back to another movie review. Today we are going over and ranking Moana. Moana, released in 2016, directed by Ron Clements, John Musker, and Don Hall, in ancient Polynesia, when a terrible curse incurred by the demigod Maui reaches Moana's island, she answers the ocean's call to seek out Maui to set things right. So I've never actually seen Moana. I watched it last night for the very first time, and I'm just not a big fan of singing in movies and like those kind of Disney movies because I feel like it pulls me out because I just don't understand why they are singing. There isn't really, unless it's an actual movie about a musician or someone that sings. I feel like singing does not need to be in movies. Obviously, it's made for children. So children enjoy the singing, so it makes sense why movies are made that way. It's just as someone that enjoys movies, I just don't enjoy them as much if there's singing in them, if it's unnecessary. But in this one, I was pleasantly surprised. I thought the story was very interesting, and I was interested in seeing what was going to happen. And the music actually didn't pull me out. It kept me right in because of how catchy it is. So that I do have to give it credit for. So without further ado, let's just get right into the 10 essential aspects of a movie. The first essential aspect is plot. I enjoyed the plot of this movie. I thought the whole concept was very interesting and was intriguing to me. And I also like how they developed Moana's character at the beginning of just showing the most vital and important moments in her life, not necessarily in general of what she was supposed to be with being the chief's daughter trying to take over, just becoming the chief of the village, but in her being called to by the ocean to go save basically the world. And I thought that that was good of just showing just the vital moments instead of spending an hour and 20 minutes just fully focused on her before she goes out and does all this interesting stuff. Instead, they zoomed right through it with all the stuff that was needed to be seen in order to understand the character without overdoing it. So I'm glad that they did that, and a lot of movies do that, and that's a smart tool because you don't get bored with the character before they even get to the interesting part. And then obviously, once she went and found Maui to save the world, that's when it was very interesting. So I do have to say, plot-wise, it was good, it was interesting, but the character development is what really stood out here. The second essential aspect is attraction. Now again, this is a movie for kids, so there's two different kinds of attractions here. Is it attractive to kids? 100,000%. I mean, this movie was very entertaining. It was very bright, very colorful. The singing was actually good and catchy. So for kids, absolutely. And for me as an adult, I still enjoyed the characters. I still enjoyed the story. I still enjoyed the concept. And the singing was tolerable to me because it was catchy. So for me, the movie was very attractive. The third essential aspect is theme. I'd say the theme of this movie has to be to never give up on yourself. Both Moana and Maui had this revelation in the movie. So that has to be a theme. I mean, if just because something isn't going your way doesn't mean you should give up on your goals. You should just find a different angle. Just take a different way, but still move towards your goals. The fourth essential aspect is dialogue. So when it comes to the conversations in the dialogue, everything was okay. Everything was decent. There wasn't any discrepancies. However, the conversations had between Maui and Moana are definitely the best of the part because the chemistry they had was just absolutely incredible. The starting off with butting heads, then realizing they need each other almost as much as the other one needs them. So I would say overall dialogue was good, but specifically out of them two was great. The fifth essential aspect is acting. So obviously this is animated, so it's voice acting, not acting. But either way, I wanted to talk about it in this section instead of the dialogue just because it makes more sense. It's voice acting. Acting is still in the title. So Moana was played by Auli'i Cravalho, and I mean, I had to look up that pronunciation. I'm still not 100% certain if I said it right. Let me know. But either way, I think she did a really great job. She really felt like the one actress that can play her because it felt like she was just playing herself. That's what it seemed like. She felt very confident in the role, and it made me believe the role even more. So even though it's just voice acting, I can tell with just the way that she gave her lines all her heart that she knew exactly what she was going for, and she succeeded in that. And Dwayne Johnson played Maui, And I also think he was a great person for the role because Maui just, if he was bald, he'd look just like a cartoon version of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. So I wonder why I don't wonder why they cast him actually, because it's exactly a perfect role for him. And I have to say, even though Dwayne Johnson has movies where they're sometimes really good, sometimes really bad, most of the time it's very mediocre. I mean, he was one of the big reasons this movie was really good. So I have to give him props for that. He did great in the role. The sixth essential aspect is cinematography. Just because I forgot to mention it earlier in Attraction, the chicken in this movie, probably one of my favorite parts of this movie. I thought it was absolutely hilarious, and even though its kind of version of comedy was angled towards children, I found myself laughing the whole time. I mean, that chicken being as dumb as he is, just it separated itself from the movie to the point where anytime the chicken was in the scene, I found myself enjoying it. It doesn't matter what else was happening. So, all right, I got that out of the way. Now, cinematography. Emotions-wise, I think it did really well. I feel like, obviously, again, this is a kids' movie. It's angled towards kids. Kids probably felt a little more emotion than I did in this. I didn't cry or anything, but I definitely felt the emotion resonating from these characters. So they did do a good job of that. And visuals-wise, animated movie, it's animated very well. It looks really nice, especially all the scenes with the ocean and the ocean moving. It looks very good. So visuals-wise, I would say it is pretty good. And emotion-wise, it did its job. The seventh essential aspect is editing. So Moana is an hour and 47 minutes long. I think that's a good length. It's not too long, it's not too short. I feel like an hour and 30 wouldn't have that time for that previous character development in order to make Moana the character she is. And if it was a bit longer, I feel like they'd be running out of things to really do in it, which is why I'm very curious of what's going to be in Moana 2. I have no idea what they're planning on doing because I feel like the movie ended off in a pretty good point, but we'll see. But either way, I feel like the pacing of the movie was good, and they really shouldn't change the time at all if they could, because again, too long, too short, it's right in the middle. Perfect. The eighth essential aspect is soundtrack. Now, of course, this is a Disney movie, so soundtrack, plenty of singing, and I have to say, I've watched a lot of Disney movies. I have not liked a good chunk of the singing. I feel like it pulls me out. Again, as I mentioned earlier, this one pulled me in. I feel like the songs that were in this just felt more natural in the world that they were in compared to just a princess deciding that she wants to sing and suddenly everything else can sing as well perfectly great with a great voice. So this at least made sense to me. So maybe that's why it did so. But overall, yeah, all the songs in this were catchy. I mean, that's really the one job the soundtrack should have in this kind of movie. The ninth essential aspect is directing. So I think it's the director's job to take these previous 8 essential aspects, put them together to make a movie that's worth watching. And the directors of this movie were Ron Clements, John Musker, and Don Hall. And together they've previously directed 8 movies. And Don Hall's 2 movies were Winnie the Pooh and Big Hero 6, while Clements and Musker's 6 movies that they've done together were The Great Mouse Detective, The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Hercules, Treasure Planet, and The Princess and the Frog. Now, Don Hall hasn't really done any directing with these 2 others, but Clemens and Musker have directed the only 6 previous movies that they have directed before Moana together. So they clearly know how to work well together in making good movies. I mean, those are all pretty good movies for the most part. So they know how to work well together. So I feel like that they were a great choice to put into this, and adding Don Hall's experience with 2 really good movies as well of Big Hero 6 and Winnie the Pooh to add to make this really good kids movie. So I have to say, this movie was done well and it makes sense with the director's resume. And the 10th essential aspect is time. Now, I think this movie has stood the test of time to this point, obviously, since they're making a sequel now, which I didn't even know they were going to, but I mean, it's still relevant, so it makes sense why they are. But I think the movie's really good, and a lot of people's one of their favorites when it comes to Disney movies. I feel like whenever I hear any soundtrack from Disney, this one pops up a lot. So it definitely stands the test of time. That's no question. Now, onto the reviews. So, Rotten Tomatoes critics gave it a 95%, Rotten Tomatoes audience gave it an 89%, and IMDb gave it a 76%. I understand why Rotten Tomatoes critics and Rotten Tomatoes audience put it so high. It's a really good movie. There's no doubt about that. I feel like just when it comes to movies all time, I can't put it up there. I honestly kind of agree with IMDb. I think it belongs like 80. I think 80 is right where it needs to be, where it's obviously a really good movie and definitely up there, but there is still a good 20% of movies are still going to be above it. So I just think 80 is where it needs to be, right in between Rotten Tomatoes audience and IMDb. And finally, the rankings. So, in 2016, it's going to be third above X-Men Apocalypse and below Spectral. Now, it's above X-Men Apocalypse because that movie has some plot problems. As much as I love Marvel and I'm very biased towards it, and I love that movie mostly because of Quicksilver. I love his scenes in it, so that's why I have so much love for the movie. Otherwise, if I turn away from that, it's not the best movie. It's okay. It has its moments, but there's definitely plot problems and overall just issues with the movie in general. So Moana is easily above it. And it's below Spectral because Spectral was a very surprising movie to me. I've never seen it. When I watched it, I didn't think it was going to be that good. I found myself so engaged with the movie. I feel like that a lot of movies don't do that with me. So just for that point alone, I think it belongs above Moana. But also just the concept was very interesting and allowed you to try to figure out who these spectrals were on your own, which I also love when movies do. Like a mystery movie, for example, I'm always trying to figure out who the main killer is. In this movie, I'm trying to figure out what these spectrals are and how they even became a thing. So I have to say that movie is definitely better than Moana. And in the 2010s, it's going to be ninth, above Deadpool 2 and below X-Men First Class. Now it's below or above Deadpool 2 because that movie, as much as I love Deadpool, he is definitely one of my favorite Marvel heroes or anti-heroes. I think that movie, again, has some plot discrepancies compared to this movie. And overall, I feel like if I look at a broader audience, Moana is definitely a movie that more people would enjoy than Deadpool 2. The comedy is not for everyone. I love that kind of raunchy comedy. You might not. But, I mean, Moana is literally made for everyone. So that's another big thing that kind of sold it for me. But if I had to watch one again, I probably would watch Deadpool because I'm a Marvel guy. But if I removed that bias, Moana is probably the one I would watch. And it's below First Class because that movie is not a masterpiece, but it's really, really good. It's up there. It has its great plot. It has amazing character development showing this origin of the X-Men. So for me, that was just a no-brainer. I didn't really have to think about it. I just think that movie is definitely better than Moana. And in all time, it's going to be 20th, above Inside Out 2 and below Rush Hour. Now, I'm going to be quick right here with the Inside Out 2 because it's not necessarily better than Inside Out 2. It's just Inside Out 1 is better and it's already up there. So I wanted to make room between the sequels because, again, if I had to choose between one of them, I would choose Inside Out. And that's why Inside Out 2 is so low. This doesn't necessarily mean Moana is higher than Inside Out 2, even though it's going to be close because both those are really good movies. And it's below Rush Hour because that movie, I mean, it came out in the 90s and it is absolutely hilarious. I loved watching it so many times. I forgot how good it was until I watched it again. And I think it has a good, healthy mix of action, comedy, and overall really interesting plot. So again, overall, I think Rush Hour is slightly better than Moana. That's all I have for Moana. If you guys enjoyed this review, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and make sure to comment what movie you want me to review next. Let me know what you thought of the movie. Did I put it a little too high? Did I put it a little too low? Let me know where you would have put it. If you want to see someone that does movie reviews just like I do with the same format, check out my best friend, Mr. Majoritarian. He does the same thing with the rankings and the reviews and overall with the 10 essential aspects, except he has a little bit of a different opinion. Like, for example, he focuses a lot on the cinematography while I do kind of not necessarily turn a blind eye to it, but I focus on entertainment a little more, I feel like. I feel like if I enjoy a movie a little more, not based off of cinematography, I will put it higher, while he focuses a lot on how the movie's made, why it was made, and just answering all those questions. So if you want to see someone with a more cinematic view on the movies, definitely check him out. And I hope you guys have an amazing night. Peace out.